Hey guys, in today's video, we'll be going over how to install Flex Post in our Flex series. This will include how to measure for, build, and install the Flex Post. Before getting started, I want to go over the purpose of the Flex Post. The Flex Post allows you to make 90-degree turns within the layout of a project. When you receive the Flex Post, there'll be nothing attached to it. You'll need to take a look at the drawing to determine the configurations of the Flex Post. For each wall that comes off the Flex Post, we will have a flex stud attached to it. The flex stud allows you to attach the floor and ceiling track to the Flex Post. I have mocked up 3 of the most common situations you'll find on a project with Flex Posts. In this example, we have a 90-degree turn. We have a flex stud attached to 2 sides of the Flex Post to make that 90-degree turn. You'll have 2 exposed faces of the Flex Post. Whenever you don't have a wall coming off the Flex Post, you will not have a flex stud attached to the post. For this example, we're making a T-shaped wall. We have a flex stud attached to 3 sides of the Flex Post, with one side being exposed. On this last example, we're going to have walls coming off all 4 sides of the Flex Post. Therefore, I have 4 flex studs attached to the Flex Post. Along with the configuration of the Flex Post, there will also be a specific length of flex studs need to be cut to that will be attaching to that Flex Post. This will be dependent on the design of the project. We're going to go ahead and show you how to measure for your Flex Post, measure for your flex studs, attach the flex studs to the post, and install the Flex Post to your floor and ceiling track. Once the layout is complete and the location of the Flex Posts have been determined, you can now measure for the Flex Post. The Flex Post will run from floor to ceiling. You'll want to make sure that your Flex Posts are nice and tight to the ceiling. I'll take my Flex Post measurement and I'll get it cut. Test fit the Flex Post to make sure it fits properly. Again, we want it nice and tight to the ceiling. With the Flex Post fitting properly, we can now determine the configuration of the Flex Post as well as the length of studs that need to be attached to that Flex Post. To determine the number of flex studs attaching to the Flex Post, take a look at the drawing. Again, anytime you have a wall coming off a Flex Post, you will have a flex stud attaching to the Flex Post. To determine the length of the flex studs needed, again take a look at the drawing. In this video, I will go over 4 different scenarios you'll see with floor-to-ceiling applications on our Flex series. In this section of the video, I will go over 2 of the 4 scenarios you'll see when determining the length of the flex studs needed. On this side of the Flex Post, I'm going to have a door opening with a flex track attached to the ceiling. This will apply to full height swing doors, non-full height swing doors, and non-full height sliding doors. On this side of the Flex Post, I will have a flex track attached to the ceiling and a flex track attached to the floor. Now, this is a situation you're typically going to see with any non-door frame openings. The flex stud measurement with the door opening coming off of the Flex Post with a flex track attached to the ceiling, the measurement will be the length of the post minus 3/4 of an inch. This measurement allows the flex stud to go into the ceiling track and run directly to the floor. On the non-door opening side, with the flex track attached to the ceiling and a flex track attached to the floor, the flex stud measurement will be the length of the post minus 1.5 inches. Now, you do not need to measure for your flex studs with the Flex Post in place. The reason being is because we're going to pre-build this post on the floor. So with both of those measurements in mind, I'll go ahead and cut my flex studs for the post. Before attaching the flex studs to the post, inspect the post for any damages. If there are any damages, you may be able to cover up those damages with the flex studs depending on the configuration of the post. The flex studs will be centered on the flex post. If you would like a guide to find center, you can take two small pieces of trim and install them on each side of the flex stud. When the flex trim is installed, you'll have a nice flush finish between the flex trim and the flex post on each side of the stud. I will start with the door opening side of the flex post. Take your flex stud you cut for the door opening and place it on the center of the flex post. With the calculation we used to cut this stud, you could flush the bottom edge of the flex stud with the bottom edge of the post. This will create a 3/4 inch gap at the top of the post. This allows enough space for the flex track to butt into the flex post and have the flex stud go into the flex track. Now, if your stud's a little bit shorter, it's not a big deal. Just make sure you're inside that flex track. With my flex stud centered and flush with the bottom edge of the flex post, I can now attach the flex stud to the post. To attach the flex stud to the flex post, use an 1.25 inch framing screw supplied with the product. We typically use 4 screws per stud attaching to a flex post. At the top of the post, hold the screw down approximately 6 inches. This allows enough space to slide the flex L bracket into the center of the stud when connecting the flex post to the flex track. I'll now run my 4 attaching screws. To attach the flex stud to the flex post, when you have a flex track attached to the ceiling and a flex track attached to the floor, place the flex stud in the center of the flex post. Position the flex stud so that it is 3/4 of an inch down from the top of the post and 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom of the post. This allows the flex track to bypass the flex stud and butt directly into the flex post. With the flex stud in the correct position, I'll now attach the flex stud to the post. As a reminder, at the top, we want to be 6 inches down to allow space for that flex L bracket. We'll do the same thing at the bottom. With a flex post built, I can get it installed. As you can see, I already have a flex track attached to the floor and the ceiling. Now the flex post will play a role into the order of operations of the installation. At the end of this video, I'll discuss how that flex post plays into the order of operations. But for now, I'll go ahead and show you how to install the flex post with the 2 scenarios we've already discussed. To attach the flex track to the flex post, slide in the flex L bracket from the flex track into the center of the flex stud. Once in place, tighten the set screw on the L bracket. Then attach the flex L bracket to the flex stud using 3/4 inch framing screws. With the anchoring screws attached, we actually will run another 3/4 inch screw through the flex L bracket into the flex track. What this does is it anchors that flex post in place. With the top done, we'll move to the floor and repeat the process. Again, slide in your flex L bracket. Tighten the set screw. Attach the L bracket to the stud using the 3/4 inch framing screws. The same as the top of the opening, we're going to anchor the flex L bracket into the floor with our anchoring screws. On the door opening side of the opening, we're going to repeat the same process. We'll slide in our flex L bracket, Tighten the set screw. Anchor the bracket to the flex stud using the 3/4 inch framing screws. Then anchor the bracket through the flex L bracket and into the flex track. In this section of the video, we'll go over how to determine the flex stud length for the two other scenarios when installing a flex post. For these last two scenarios, it is only going to apply to full height sliding doors in our flex series. When you have full height sliding doors in our flex series, we have a Genesis stud stretching across the entire front. For this example, I'm going to show a door opening on this side of the post with a Genesis stud attached to the ceiling, and then on this side of the post, it's going to represent the remaining front if you're attaching to a flex post on the opposite side of the door opening. So therefore, I'm going to have a Genesis stud attached to the ceiling and a flex track attached to the floor. To measure for the flex stud on the door opening side when you have a Genesis stud attached to the ceiling, the measurement will be the length of the post minus 1 5/8 inches. This measurement allows you to go under the Genesis stud and run directly to the floor. On this side of the flex post, when you have a Genesis stud attached to the ceiling and the flex track attached to the floor, the stud length measurement will be the length of the post minus 2 3/8 inches. This measurement allows you to be under the Genesis stud and into the floor track. So with those measurements in mind, I'll go ahead and cut my flex studs. To install the flex stud to the post on the door opening location, take the stud and place it on the center of the flex post. With the calculation we use to cut the flex stud, you can flush the bottom edge of the flex stud to the bottom edge of the flex post. At the top of the post, the flex stud should be 1 5/8 inches down from the top of the post. With the flex stud in the correct position, I'll go ahead and attach the stud to the post using the 1 1/4 inch framing screws. To attach the flex stud to the post when you have a Genesis stud attached to the ceiling and a flex track attached to the floor, place the flex stud in the center of the flex post. With the calculation we use to cut the stud, you'll need to be 1 5/8 inches down from the top of the post and 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom edge of the post. With my flex stud in place, I can now attach it to the flex post. Same as the other two scenarios, you want to make sure you're 6 inches down from the top and at least 6 inches up from the bottom to allow for the flex L bracket to slide into the flex stud. To attach the Genesis stud to the flex post, slide in the flex L bracket into the center of the flex stud. Tighten your set screw to lock the L bracket in place. Attach the flex L bracket to the flex stud using your 3/4 inch framing screws. Run a 3/4 inch screw going through the L bracket and into the Genesis stud to anchor the post in place. At the floor, slide in the flex L bracket into the center of the flex stud. Tighten your set screw. Attach the L bracket using the 3/4 inch framing screws. Same as the top of the opening, we're going to run an anchoring screw through the flex L bracket into the floor. On the door opening side of the post, we'll repeat the same process. Slide your flex L bracket into the center of the flex stud. Tighten the set screw to anchor the L bracket in place. Attach the flex L bracket to the flex stud using the 3/4 inch framing screws. Then run an anchoring screw through the flex L bracket and into the Genesis stud to lock the flex post in place. Before concluding, I mentioned earlier in this video how the flex post plays a role into the order of operations of an installation. Typically, when we install projects, once we have the layout complete and the flex post locations determined, we'll go ahead and cut our flex posts. From there, we'll take one of the flex posts and we'll mock it in place in order to take the ceiling track measurement. Now you have to have the ceiling track installed in order to attach the flex post to it. So once we have that ceiling track installed and the flex post built, we'll attach it to that ceiling track, we'll plumb up the flex post, and then take the floor track measurement. Now it's going to be 100% dependent on the design of your project, so you're going to have to look at the layout to determine the order of operations. For example here, if I had a wall that had a flex post in the center, I would take our flex post, I would place it where it needs to be. I'll take my measurement from the wall to the post. I'd cut my flex track. I'd then bring my flex post back into place and attach it at the top. I would plumb the flex post and then cut the floor track. Now what this does is it locks this side of the wall in so it cannot move. And from there, I can work on the rest of my fronts. So with that in mind, this will conclude the video. If you have any questions, please contact our office.